Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Our first story is all about Richard, who, let's be honest, lived up to his name. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with a turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Petty ex-husband refuses to leave until his stuff is packed. So this happened when I was in my late teens, 17 if I recall correctly, and was still living with my mom. During this time, she'd gone through a divorce with my stepdad. Let's just call him Richard. As the name implies, Richard was a real, Richard. He was smug, arrogant, saw himself smarter than everyone else, and when he gets upset, he can be a real devious jerk. Now, Richard was still living with us as the house he was going to move in was still unlivable, so he would put on the charm trying to get my mother to take him back, but that ship had sailed a long time ago, all while he's moving his stuff into his van, very, very slowly. One day, I'm sitting in the dining room eating my lunch when I hear my mom and Richard arguing about something. I only recently learned that they were arguing about how the house he was meant to be moving into that was unlivable was actually very much livable. They were going to cut back and forth as they moved their argument in the dining room. I'm just sitting there eating my sandwich. My mother's angry. Richard's trying to defend himself. Then a light bulb appears up over his head as that devious smile appears on his face, a smile I knew all too well. Richard, fine, but I won't move until all my stuff is in my van. My mother's PO'd as she knew as well as I that he was dragging his heels with that, but then she collects herself. I can see the gears running, but didn't know the malicious compliant she was thinking up. My mom, with a sweet smile, fine. Then leaves. Richard, seeming to have gotten victory, leaves too. The next morning, I'm in the dining room eating breakfast, and my mother's standing at the window just watching Richard as he was leaving to go to work, taking my mother's car. Don't know why to get there. It's an hour drive to get there, and he leaves pretty early. I hear the car turn on, then drive off. The moment he's gone, my mother turns to me, Mom, hey, OP, you up for some moving? Instantly, I knew what that look was about yesterday as I smile back to her. We begin to move his stuff into his van, moving his bed, his bedside tables, all his junk, finding any kind of room to put it in the van. We didn't stop, not for a break, not for anything. We were on a mission. Professional movers would have wept by how well we did this. It was like a real-life game of Tetris, rearranging pieces for the perfect fit, slipping into impossible positions. We started around 7:30, we finished at 1:30. The van was packed, and I mean packed. There was only enough room for the driver, and that's it. We celebrated with a late lunch and just sat giddy like little schoolgirls, just waiting. Sure enough, about 4:40, Richard returns. Mom and I walked to the driveway to greet him. Mom, oh, hi, Richard, how was your day? Richard, still having no clue. Oh, it was good. Dealt with some customers, got some projects done, the usual. Mom, that's nice, that's nice. Well, you can go now. Richard, now shocked. What? I can't leave. I told you I won't leave until all my stuff is in my van. That smug smile returning to his face, it was too good. Me, you did say that, and there you go. I point to his packed van that was sitting only mere feet from him. He turns, he realizes the look beyond priceless. He turned to us, his face a combination of emotions. Richard, did you two do this? Mom, us? Oh no, we just found like this. Do you know what happened, OP? I just played dumb, trying to hide my smile, failing epically. Me, I have no idea, but since all your stuff's in there, I guess you have no excuse to leave now. Richard just stared, a deer in headlights. His only bargaining chip on staying was gone. Without another word and defeat written on his face, gets in the van, backs out, and drives out. We turned back inside, glowing from our little achievement, knowing that we had one less Richard to deal with. Richard thought he'd outsmarted your mom, but he didn't count on her being 2 steps ahead. That's textbook malicious compliance. Very tiring for you both, though. Still, totally worth not having to live with someone you don't want. And our second story. I'm just the delivery guy. A little backstory. I, work for a freight company, FC, and my job is to drive around town in a semi-truck with a 28-foot trailer with a lift gate on it and deliver items on pallets that are too big for normal mail trucks. So I'm delivering an industrial dishwasher to a new restaurant. I have to squeeze my truck through the alley to the back door like normal. I'm too big to park on the side of the road. I go in and the manager politely says, "We can't take that today. I was told it was supposed to come in 2 days and I just don't have the room." I said, "No problem, I'll bring it back in 2 days." I load up and leave, which, by the way, is not easy to do because it weighs 700 pounds. Fast forward 2 days, I'm back behind the restaurant, so I lower my lift gate, open my door, and head inside with the paperwork I'll need to show the customer. I look around inside and find an employee that takes me downstairs to locked door where a man, rude owner, comes out of and immediately stares at me and repeatedly interrupts while I say my opening line, "Hello, I'm OP from FC. What do you want?" Yeah, I have your dishwasher." He abruptly walks away, so I follow him into the kitchen area where he starts barking orders. "So I need this dishwasher pulled out, that electrical line replaced, the feed and drain lines replaced, and you need to take the old one with you. This was supposed to be done yesterday, and we open in 2.5 hours. Obviously, I'm confused, so we share an awkward stare for what seems like an eternity until he breaks the silence with a, "Well?" I didn't realize what's happening here, so I say, "Sir, I don't know if someone told you the wrong information, but I'm not the installer. I'm just here to drop it off." He didn't like that. "I don't care what you're here for. I need this done now." All I can muster is, "Sir, if you need it installed, you're going to have to call a plumber." He then throws a fit and yells at me saying to get it down there before he calls my boss. This is where I get evil. You see, we have to get a signature on a delivery receipt to complete the delivery. Well, I had him sign it before this all happened, so I go the 150 yards and 2 staircases back to my truck, get in the back, and lift the pallet with pallet jack. At 700 pounds, it's hard to move it with even that. I drop it to the asphalt, load my jack back up, and leave. As I leave, I see him come running out, waving his arms, and I keep going. An hour later, I get to the yard, and my boss/uncle says, "Got a call from RO, he's pissed." Then he sticks his hand up for a high five. Nice one. Moral of the story, don't be rude to people who have the power to make your day terrible. I'm amused by the concept of a dishwasher installed by a truckie. I mean, you're a skilled worker, don't get me wrong, but your skills are not plumbing installation. Seems like that restaurateur might have more problems if you'd done what he told you to do instead of sensibly doing your job and then leaving the hostile situation alone. And our last story. Petty parking tyrant tries to get me towed, ends up in trouble himself. I live in a large apartment complex where parking is an absolute nightmare. There are never enough spots, and anyone who lives here knows that if you come home late, you're basically forced to park blocks away and walk to your building. The only reserved spaces are legitimate disabled parking spots, which I always respect, no exceptions. That said, there's one spot right across from my apartment building that I've been lucky enough to snag almost every night. It's not reserved, not marked, just a normal public parking space. That is until last night when I got home from work and found myself confronted by an angry man who seemed to have a serious problem with where I parked. As I was grabbing my things from the car, I heard footsteps approaching fast. A man I'd never spoken to before stomped up to me, already fuming. "Man, where's your disabled parking permit?" Me. "Excuse me?" "Man, are you blind? You're in a disabled space." I blinked at him in confusion because I knew for a fact that I was not in a disabled space. I'd parked in the exact same spot for months. There had never been a sign, no markings, no reason to believe this was anything but a normal parking space. Feeling uneasy, I walked to the front of my car, and that's when I saw it. There was now a small, flimsy plastic sign attached to the lamppost. It looked brand new, the kind of thing you'd find in the parking section of Home Depot. It wasn't bolted down properly, just loosely zip-tied to the post. I turned back to him, staring in disbelief. Me. This wasn't here before. "Man, that doesn't matter. It's here now, so you need to respect it." Me. "This isn't even a real disabled parking sign. There's no wheelchair access, no blue curb markings, nothing. This wasn't designated by the city or the apartment management. Someone just put this here." Man, are you really arguing with me about respecting disabled people? At this point, he'd fully launched into a tirade, voice rising, throwing his arms around, etc. Man, if I see you parking here again, I'm calling the police and getting your car towed. Me. You're seriously threatening to have my car towed over a fake sign? Man, fake? You think disabilities are fake? Wow, you must be a real piece of work. I felt my blood start to boil. Me. Oh, so you're standing up for disabled people, yet you're using blindness as an insult? Do you even hear yourself? That stopped him in his tracks. His face turned red, and for a second he just stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish. Finally, he huffed, mumbled something under his breath, and stormed off. I wasn't about to let some random guy decide where I could and couldn't park. This was private property, and if he wanted to enforce parking rules, he'd need actual authority, not a cheap plastic sign. So the next morning, I marched straight to the apartment complex management office. When I told them what happened, they were immediately suspicious. They pulled up the parking records and confirmed that no new disabled spaces had been added. I showed them a photo of the obviously fake sign, and they were not amused. Turns out, any reserved or handicapped space on private property has to meet strict regulations. There has to be an official permit from the city, proper blue curb markings, posted notices, and accessibility ramps. But a random plastic sign zip-tied to a pole is absolutely meaningless. Later that day, management sent maintenance workers to remove the sign. Then they billed the man for the cost of repainting the curb to match the rest of the lot because apparently he'd also tried to spray paint the curb blue himself. Even better, they issued him a citation for defacing private property and put a note on file that he'd been harassing residents. If he pulled anything like this again, he'd face eviction, and my parking spot's still mine. He claimed to be standing up for disabled people, but was using blindness as an insult? Sir, your hypocrisy is showing. Honestly, I like how fast management shut him down. Not only did they remove his fake parking spot, but they billed him for the damages and put him on warning for eviction. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.